Over the past few days, we've been walking you through round by round, talking about the best ADP values for your fantasy football drafts coming up in the next couple of weeks. Today, we're diving into the worst ADP values, and we're going to start at the top, rounds 1 through 5. Let's get it. Welcome in once again. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel. This guy over here to my left, which is your right, oddly, is Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05. Today, we are talking worst values by round by Fantasy Pros, consensus ADP through a number of sources. We're going to get into the ugly first, but before we do, let's get into the pretty and let's talk to Jesse. Jesse, how's it going, man?
Oh, I'm feeling glorious today. Let me tell you what. Sun is shining. It's a glorious day. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I actually like some of these guys, and I do not like some of these guys. So we've had some interesting discussions off of camera, so it'll be fun to see how those pan out on camera and how we kind of view the guys we like and the guys we don't like. But yeah, it's going to be fun because, of course, you have the guys you like, and then, of course, you get the other flip side of the coin. You're like, well, I don't like these guys. And does our rationale stack up? I believe it does, but, you got to wait out and see because it's going to be fun.
That's it, man. So let's dive into it and get ugly right away in the first round. Once again, we are talking ADP by consensus on Fantasy Pros. This is PPR ADP, and we have 5 sources from ESPN, CBS Sports, Sleeper, NFL.com, and RT Sports. All those ADPs combined on the Fantasy Pros site to give us a consensus. So the consensus first round ADPs are as followed, just like last time. We have at the top Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall, Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, Jonathon Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs. So, Jesse, who do you hate out of this bunch in the first round?
So when I look at round 1, guys, these are the most like the guys you want the high floor with the potential chance to give you the high ceiling. So I know we're dealing with a CMC injury. Like supposedly everything's going to be fine with him. So sorry, the shine is shining off my dome here, but it's going to be fine for him. So my thought process is going into this, if a guy doesn't have a chance to get that ceiling, I don't want them. Like that's my issue. And this is my whole issue with Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. I think he's very much a high floor play. But the ceiling, I just don't see it there because he's been in the Giants the last couple of years. He's been their offense, and he still only put up a 15% target share last year. His yards per route run were like 1.1, which is like barely inside the top 30 running backs. So like he's aging out. He's not as explosive as he used to be. Now on the flip side, what I think is going to happen is he's not going to get the same volume he's going to get that he got in New York with Philadelphia. But I think he could be more efficient. I just don't see the path to him being the RB1, like being the Christian McCaffrey, because Christian McCaffrey's just been better over the course of his career, even in a similar situation, what he's going to. And then the cherry on top is the Jalen Hurts, the rushing, his ability to like be down the goal line, rushing touchdowns and all that. Now people will say like Miles Sanders got 10 touchdowns and DeAndre Swift was pretty good last year. And I'm like, I don't care about pretty good if we're talking about round 1 running backs. Like I want a guy that's going to be elite. And I just don't see it with Saquon Barkley. And it sucks because Saquon Barkley has been one of my favorite running backs. Like since he came into the league, like I loved him. But if I'm paying round 1 costs, like I have question marks of him being able to hit that ceiling because it's AJ Brown, it's Devonta Smith, it's Dallas Goedert, and you have Jalen Hurts. So that's 4 people who are stealing pieces out of the offense. Now you could make the case that say Saquon Barkley is going to come in and be the offense. I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's realistic with him because we've heard people compare him to CMC like, oh, it's similar. I'm like, yeah, the issue is just CMC is just better pretty much across the board. So I get it, but that's where I'm at. So yeah, it's a weird case to be, but yeah, I'm fading Saquon Barkley in the first round. I'd be okay taking him in the second round where Derrick Henry goes. Like that's the kind of I have them back to back in rankings. But if I'm paying a full round above him, then I'm like, no, I'm just not interested in that. So fortunately, they're fading Saquon Barkley. So sorry, Eagles fans. That's what we're doing this year.
I totally get it. I think the difference here is that when you look at CMC or Bijan, Breece, the guys ahead of Barkley, those guys are all going to have elite receiving volume, especially in PPR leagues. The Philadelphia Eagles last season had 93, I believe it was, somewhere between 93 and 96. targets to the running backs last season, split up. But now we have Will Shipley in the fold. We still have Kenneth Gainwell back there, who's going to take some of that. And we know that Jalen Hurts, just as a rushing quarterback, is not a check down artist. And we also have elite receiving options in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So Saquon Barkley is probably not going to get what we're used to him getting, or the assumption of what he would get in a fully healthy season out of the backfield. And now you couple in the fact with what you're talking about, decreased goal line opportunities. I'm still happy with him because I picked another player. I'm okay with that. But I agree with you that it is definitely a risky bet after those top 3 and then 4 guys. If you want to add Gibbs in after those top guys, I really think it gets risky at running back. That's why my guy is Jonathon Taylor. Jonathon Taylor, the 111, the RB6 by consensus ADP. Both Saquon and Jonathon Taylor are ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. That's silly to me. But Jonathon Taylor, I think it's a number of factors. It's, again, you have the rushing quarterback who's going to steal that goal line work. You have the fact that he does not do too much in the passing game. I think he had something like he was in the 30s, I think, in receptions last season. So, or maybe it was only 40 total targets. I forget what the numbers are. Maybe you can tell me in just a second. But yeah, you have the decreased volume in the passing game. You have the decreased opportunities at the goal line. I do think both of these guys are going to be productive on a yards per carry basis, just because those quarterbacks are going to open up the field for them. But there's a lot of malice to feed. Maybe one less in Indy now that Josh Downs has gone down. But yeah, it's definitely tricky for these guys in round 1, given everything that they're up against.
Yeah, for your point on Taylor, like his career high targets in the season's 51. And that's the career high we're talking about. And it's interesting we both pick these guys that are dealing with rushing quarterbacks, because this is the issue with these rushing quarterbacks is they're going to pull receptions out of the offense. So they're going to do that. And both of these guys are very similar with how they orchestrate the offense, is why we're so excited for them. But the issue is it kind of hurts your running back because you're not going to get all the touches. The difference between these two guys and Derrick Henry, who's a similar situation, is he's going a round later. So it's not as much a steep cost. And also, we're not expecting the receiving volume from Derrick Henry. So we're not counting on it from Derrick Henry, right? And then you get down to the goal line. Lamar's not going to take that goal line work. So I have Henry above. I think it's above Saquon. I have him sandwiched in between JT. So that's those 3 guys. I have them very close together. So, but yeah, I just don't want to pay the extreme cost when I don't have to. If I can just wait around and get Derrick Henry, I'm just going to do that. But I get it. I think they're we both agree they're high floor guys. I just don't think the ceilings are for either one of them. So I'm with you.
Yep, agree there. And I think we both agree that Jahmyr Gibbs over both of these guys, and it's not really that close, especially in a PPR league. All right, moving on to round 2 as my computer tries to do something ridiculous. Okay, we have Puka Nacua at the top of round 2, Garrett Wilson, Kyren Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Travis Etienne, Derrick Henry, Davante Adams, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce, Chris Olave, Devon Achane, and Drake London. Jesse, round 2, who do you hate?
So there's a lot of things in this round 2. I like a lot of these guys, but also have question marks. The thing of Blake Corum is becoming more and more of a drumbeat out of LA. So I think Kyren's not going to be my guy, but if I'm fading a running back at that cost, it's probably Kyren. I would just wait because he's going a little early. So I do have a little concern with him. Davante Adams, I love Davante Adams, but that quarterback situation is terrifying. Now there are rumors he might get traded, and if he gets traded New York or something, then that's just hey, Garrett Wilson, this sucks for both of us, but they'd be high floor. But overall, Travis Kelce is the new tight end 1, so I don't know if we had redrafters come back into the season pushing up Travis Kelce's ADP, because it's been Sam Laporta for months. So my whole thought process is I'm fading whoever the tight end 1 is, and that's currently Travis Kelce based on ADP. He's going at tight end. He's picked 21, so he's a late 2 pick. I'm not going to pay the overall tight end 1 prices. I don't want to do that because I have such a cluster of guys. There's a top 6. I just want one of those guys. So instead of paying for the tight end 1, I'll take the tight end 2, the tight end 3, or the tight end 4, in the 4th round. I'd much rather pay that cost. So it's nothing against Kelce. I think he probably has the best shot to repeat, or top 3 shots to repeat. But at tight end 1 prices, I just don't want to pay it because I don't think he's going to pay off that cost, because you need him. Drafting me at tight end 1, he's got to hit tight end 1. If he hits tight end 2, tight end 3, you're paying for. So overall, at pick 21, I'm just picking Travis Kelce. That's unfortunate because it's another one of my favorite players. So it's just that's how this year's going for me.
That's it, man. These guys get a year older, and we kick them to the curb in fantasy. You got to stay ahead of the curve here. I agree with you on Kelce. I mean, Look, I think there's a number of tight ends like you referenced that have the ability to be the tight end one. I'll take the shot on a Mark Andrews if he's falling, which he seems to be. Kyle Pitts, I really love this season. There's a number of guys later, Kincaid. Those guys are like 4, 5, 6 by consensus, and they all have the ability to be tight end one. So, I agree with you. I'm going to wait 2, maybe even 3 rounds, pick up one of those guys on the back end, and then load up elsewhere this season. I don't feel the need to grab the elite tight end. Last thing I'll mention on Kelce is we saw Kansas City win a Super Bowl, and they throttled down the offense in the beginning and middle of the season to keep these guys healthy for the playoff push. And Kelce was the main one who got hit on that. So that's definitely a possibility again as he ages. My guy here is a young guy. It's a rookie. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., the 204 off the board, wide receiver 9. Wide receiver 9 is too steep. I was listening to I really wish I could reference it. It was probably Matt Waldman. I forget who was saying it, but somebody was mentioning the fact that in the history of ADP and drafting these recent guys, even though there's rookies who like Puka Nacua, for example, who put up monster rookie seasons, we were not drafting them with the expectation that they were going to put up monster rookie seasons. So they were league winners because they were values at ADP, whether you expected that to happen or not. All right, certainly the entire market didn't expect it to happen.
Yes.
Secondly, if you look at someone like Puka Nacua, and let me just give you his totals: 105 receptions, 1,486 total yards, and 6 touchdowns. You see that insane volume and that yardage total that spiked with him. I don't see that level of production for Marvin Harrison. It's certainly possible, but that seems like, if you're betting on that, that seems like it's a bit of a struggle to kind of get there in that offense. And then the third thing I'll say is that even though Puka had this historic rookie season, in the modern era where the game has kind of changed, we've seen guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You can put Odell Beckham in that group. We can lump in Randy Moss if we want, just because he's an all-timer. All of these, Keenan Allen, even if you go back a little ways, all of these guys had really, really amazing rookie seasons. The problem is, Jesse, they all played with Hall of Fame or soon-to-be Hall of Fame quarterbacks. They all played in amazing offenses. The worst quarterback of that bunch was Randall Cunningham, throwing to Randy Moss, but Randall's in the Hall of Fame. You got Eli throwing to Odell. You got Burrow throwing to Chase. And then, of course, the connection in college. You got Kirk Cousins throwing to Justin Jefferson. And then, of course, you had Matthew Stafford, future Hall of Famer Matthew Stafford, throwing to Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp went down for the season. And who's calling plays? Oh, just future Hall of Fame head coach Sean McVay calling the plays. So perfect storm for Puka Nacua. And he was drafted in like the 12th, 13th, 14th round in your drafts. You're telling me that I have to take Marvin Harrison at the 204, the beginning of the second round, to hopefully get a Puka Nacua season. But what's more likely is that I'm going to get a Devonta Smith season. Last year, 81 receptions, so not his rookie season, but 81 receptions, 1,066 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That, I think, we would consider a very successful season for Marvin Harrison Jr. in his rookie year. That was wide receiver 19. Right now, Sleeper is projecting Marvin Harrison Jr. for wide receiver 19 numbers, 81 receptions, 1,091 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Again, a very successful season by all accounts, except for where you're drafting him. Love the player, love the landing spot. I think it's going to go very well for him. I think he's being overdrafted.
Yeah, I think with Marvin Harrison Jr., it gets really interesting because you're comparing them to like Davante Adams, guys like Chris Olave, Drake London, in that range of player. And what you need him to get to is about 16 points per game to pay off wide receiver 9. Some seasons it's like 17 points per game, but it's in that range. It's about 260 points. So if we do the projections for Marvin Harrison, it comes out to about 13.7 points per game, which you need about 30 more points over the course of the season to hit it. I think it's a decent bet in that range. I don't mind making the bet, but I get it. It is steep. I think it's just the market's gotten a lot sharper with these guys. So like they're realizing like, oh, rookies are really, really good bet. The whole thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. is you just don't get the discount. Like you have to be willing to pay the price for him this year, the iron price, because it's like the steepest the running wide receiver a rookie's ever gone. Like we never had him as high, to your point. So like I get it. I don't mind it, but yeah, where he's going, the range of player, like it's a tough bet to make. So you have to be willing to stand up and be like, yep, he's gonna absolutely smash this year. Because I mean, the Puka stuff's legendary, and Puka got like 300, basically 300 fantasy points for him. So
Yeah,
it's tough.
but
I don't mind it, but yeah, I'm with you. There are some question marks in that range of player.
and again, Cooper Kupp injured, Matthew Stafford, Hall of Fame incoming, Sean McVay, Hall of Fame incoming. All of these things working in Puka's favor, and they had a really good run game, and they had a pretty bad defense. Right, Arizona's got the bad defense. Arizona has a decent run game if that line can hold up. But I'm not betting on Kyler Murray to be Hall of Fame production. I can't tell you who the offensive coordinator is in Arizona, and so it's just kind of a situation where I think he's going to do very well this season. I just think that, it's going to be hard for him to exceed wide receiver 9 in his first season. He can hit it. He can be a back-end wide receiver 1. But if I'm making the bet, I'm betting that he does not pay off at ADP.
Yeah, the offensive coordinator in Arizona is Drew Petzing. He spent time in like Minnesota as an assistant coach and a couple years in Cleveland with the tight ends and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, we don't have a lot of history with him other than that. So it's up to Kyler if he could do it. So I think if you're willing to bet on Kyler, you should probably be willing to bet on Harrison or McBride or possibly both, because we've seen Kyler in the past. Like, he's supported DeAndre Hopkins, like he have Hollywood Brown, these guys that have been really good. And Zach Ertz has been fantasy viable there too in the past. So I think it's entirely up to you if you want to make that bet. I think it is a risky-ish bet paying that cost for him. So yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I'm kind of out there with you, but I understand the argument. Like, I get it.
Let's move on to round 3 and talk about the guys there. Who do we hate out of Sam Laporta, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans, Jalen Hurts, Brandon Aiyuk, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, James Cook, Deebo Samuel, and Rashad White. We got a couple of quarterbacks in there. We have mostly wide receivers with a few running backs sprinkled in. Jesse, at ADP in the 3rd round, who were you out on?
So if this Aiyuk trade doesn't go through, it would be Brandon Aiyuk, but I'm fully on board with this trade happening because in the San Francisco offense, like, he had 105 targets last year. If you're giving anybody 105 targets, they're not going to be the wide. It's so hard. Like, you have to be incredibly efficient. And yeah, efficiency is the name of the game in San Francisco. So, well, I'll caveat by saying if Brandon Aiyuk stays in San Francisco, like, he's going to be a fade. Like, I'm not paying that cost. And now if he goes somewhere else, I'll pay that cost because I think he's that good. The other guy that I struggle paying the quarterback to prices, and this might sound absurd to you, is Patrick Mahomes. Because, yeah, I know. So I've been on the clock a lot, and I've struggled clicking him at like quarterback 2 in that range of draft, just because, like, we need to see the touchdowns. And, like, it wouldn't shock me, like, if any quarterback's going to do that 50 touchdowns, it's Patrick Mahomes, because he's fucking Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah. So it's just, I struggle based on how last year was and how much disaster last season was for them and what they asked him to do. I think he'd still be really good and be like quarterback 4. And I don't think he was going to be disappointed in that. So that's kind of my issue. Like, the difference between him and Allen is, like, Allen runs a ton. So, like, Allen gives you that higher floor and basically higher ceiling too. So, like, I am okay with the Josh Allen QB1 prices. Might sound a little kind of like I'm talking on both sides of my mouth, but yeah. So it's Mahomes is the guy I struggle with a lot in this range, and Pittman's the other guy too. But because Josh Downs just went down and he's going to be basically out half the year for that high ankle sprain, I'm more into Pittman at cost than I would have been. So those are kind of the guys I'm out on. But the main guy I just haven't drafted much of is Patrick Mahomes at that cost, which is, it's really tough to say that, but yeah, that's where we're at right now.
I can't get on board, Jesse. Last season, I was crapping all over Patrick Mahomes, and it was the fact that he did not have that downfield threat, that additional threat outside of Kelce and what eventually became Rashee Rice's breakout season as rookie year. But all of that, right, was close to the line of scrimmage, kind of schemed up plays. The amount of times that Valdez Scantling was wide open deep downfield, and Patrick Mahomes laid it into him 50 yards downfield, and he just absolutely dropped the football. Was so frustrating. I had multiple arguments with people on Twitter that Patrick Mahomes could not be a quarterback, a high-end quarterback 1 without an alpha. It was after witnessing another Marvin or another MVS drop on like a long bomb touchdown that would have been. We did the fantasy court about this. And then, of course, the next week, Mahomes puts up a 50-point game. And then so it looked terrible, but then he tanked the rest of the season, right? I forget how he finished, but he was, a back end QB1.
He wasn't great.
Barely 30 touchdowns, right? And, he doesn't have that rushing floor. So the thing I love about Patrick Mahomes this season is they've addressed nearly all of these issues. They fortified the offensive line. Isaiah Pacheco is better. They brought in some decent quality backup running backs outside of, McKinnon and CEH. I think who's the guy who's beaten out CEH in camp already?
Oh, Generic Prince.
Yeah. So they have guys who are better, and we love Pacheco, right? And then, of course, you add Hollywood Brown, you add Xavier Worthy, you have those deep threats, guys who have speed and can catch. And Patrick Mahomes, I think, is just set up to absolutely ball out this season. I'd be shocked if he has less than 42 touchdowns. And I'm going to put my stamp on that. He is my QB1 this season, and I do not think he's outside the top 3. I don't care if Kermit doesn't add much in the rushing floor. I think he's absolutely going to be a monster, throwing the football. So, but listen, I hear you. The rushing floor is sweet, and that's why we love guys like Anthony Richardson for sure. My guy to fade in the 3rd round is Josh Jacobs. I love the offense. I love Green Bay's offense. I love the weapons. I love Jordan Love. I love the coaching in Green Bay. I like the fact that Green Bay's defense is usually pretty decent, at least mediocre, if not a little bit better than average most seasons, which helps out the running game. I like the fact that they signed A.J. Dillon because that doesn't mean that there's a ton of competition back there. But Marshawn Lloyd is new in town. We've got all those receiving options for Jordan Love, and Josh Jacobs absolutely tanked last season. Has an injury history. He's a little bit older than he used to be. He's only 26 years old still. So certainly not a death knell yet. He hasn't hit that age cliff yet. But I am not banking on Josh Jacobs getting all of the work in this backfield for the entire season. And I think that's the real issue here. He's not going to be a workhorse. I think Marshawn Lloyd is going to cut in more and more throughout the course of the season. A.J. Dillon is in the best shape of his life. We've heard this before, but, if that actually happens, first of all, be pissed because of the amount of times I've invested in A.J. Dillon. But second of all, he could get – I forget what the stat was, but I think he had like close to 200 touches last year, A.J. Dillon. I know there was injury in that backfield, but it's just there's a lot going against Josh Jacobs here. We know the team wants to throw the football first, and the only way he gets there is on 12 to 15 touchdowns, which he can do, and he's done that before, but I just don't think the volume is there like it was in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Dillon was one of the worst running backs in the NFL last year.
He was.
But if you've seen footage of him, he looks entirely different. Like he looks like a whole new athlete. I think his body fat was at 9, now it's at 4%. Like he just looks like a different person. So watch him put up what his rookie numbers and what he did. We're like, oh yeah, he's actually decent again. So yeah, he was just awful. Like when he got the volume when Aaron Jones was out, he was just terrible. So it's really if he holds off Marshawn Lloyd, which I kind of think is what's happening right now in Green Bay. Now give it time, Lloyd might pass him. So yeah, it's a volume concern for Josh Jacobs, who's always been a volume guy. I think his lowest is 262 touches in the season. So he could get 262. I just don't know if he's going to get 300. That's the whole case. I want him to have 300 plus touches in that offense because if he does, that's how you get the ceiling. It seems like it's something has to give with his Packers offense. There's too many guys. We don't know how it's going to work out. And maybe it's Josh Jacobs or maybe it's those wide receivers. We saw Christian Watson got hurt today. So I'm a little bit more bullish on Jaden Reed now that we know Christian Watson is going to be out a little bit of time. We don't know exactly necessarily what it is. But yeah, it's an interesting offense. But I think the guy we should all just probably be investing in is Jordan Love. I think he's the piece we should probably 100%. Invest in. That makes the most sense to me. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't really want to pay Josh Jacobs that price either.
No. And in 2022, Josh Jacobs had a little quick math here, 393 touches in 2022. That made him the RB3. Okay, 393 touches will do that. Granted, there was injury in 2023. He scaled it back to just 270 total touches. But on 270 touches, he was the PPR RB 28. 8.
It was rough.
So
It was rough.
a rough season for Josh Jacobs. I don't think that's the new normal, but I think we're living somewhere in between. You're asking me to play RB12 prices. And
Mhm.
if Josh Jacobs stays completely healthy this season, I think that's his ceiling, RB12. I don't want to pay for a ceiling, especially in the third round.
Yeah, he's averaged 20 touches a game and throughout his own career. That's the pace he was on last year before he got injured. So it's if you give him 20 touches a game in Green Bay, like he's going to be one of the better backs in the NFL. It's just we're asking a lot because of how they've used those running backs years over years. So yeah, I think there's question marks to those prices, and I would rather pay it in like the 5th or 6th round as opposed to the 3rd round. So yeah, I'm with you.
100%. Let's move on to the 4th round. We have Steph Diggs, Lamar Jackson, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, Mark Andrews, and Trey McBride. Jesse, in the 4th round, who do you hate?
It's Steph Diggs. I'm not paying that cost for Steph Diggs. I'm just a little concerned of him because if you're paying that cost for him, you also want him to beat that cost of wide receiver 18 prices. That's what he's going at right now. I'm just not sure because the talent is really good in Houston. Like this is the best. I'd say it's the best probably like running mate he's had since he had Adam Thielen back in Minnesota. Like the Buffalo guys just haven't been that great, right, over the years. So it's been the Steph Diggs show. And he regressed last year, similar to what we saw Keenan Allen a couple years ago, where he regressed. But the thing with like the situation, if the situation's dog shit, which it was in LA, they can still absolutely just pepper the guy with targets and underneath slot. I just think both Tank Dell and Nico Collins are too good to let that happen, where Stroud's just going to hyper focus on Diggs because every expectations are he's going to move more into the slot, be the underneath middle of the field weapon guy. So he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine, but I just don't see the ceiling for him at the wide receiver 18. I think that's kind of his ceiling this year. And if there's going around, there's much more other guys I'd rather draft. Like I have Diggs as like my wide receiver, like in the 30s. I think he's my wide receiver 34 in rankings this year.
Yeah.
So I'm way lower on him. I have him and Tank Dell really close. I think I have Dell a few spots above him. So personally, I would just take Dell at cost a few rounds later if I'm going for the wide receiver 2 for the Texans.
Yeah, this is my guy here in the 4th round as well. The 401 means you might have to take him even at the back end of the 3rd round. If he falls to the end of the 4th round, I don't care. I am off of Steph Diggs as well. I just think that these 3 wide receivers are going to absolutely cannibalize each other, and they're going to end up with similar stat lines throughout. Maybe the touchdowns fluctuate because those aren't sticky. But if you look at roughly 80 receptions, 1,100 yards, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns for all 3 of these guys, I think that's well within the realm of possibility. Who do I want in that case? I want the cheapest option, and that's Tank Dell. We saw Tank Dell absolutely go off when he was healthy. CJ Stroud loves him. I just don't see why Tank Dell is 2 rounds below Steph Diggs. I'll wait and take Dell over Diggs. I think he's overblown. If you want another name here in the 4th round, it's hard, but I'm going to go ahead and fade Joe Mixon. Old man Mixon has proven that he can do it. There's really nobody back there, and we're talking about the fact that the Houston offense is going to be amazing. If Mixon stays healthy, he's going to smash. I just don't see that happening. I think that whoever else they have back there, Jawar Jordan, whoever else they bring in or just put behind there is going to get enough volume to matter. And if Mixon's the guy the whole season, which I don't think he will be, then great. But we'll see. He could absolutely do it. So that's why I picked Diggs. But if you want another one to fade, I think Mixon in the 4th round's a little rich.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for Mixon is I'm much more into Mixon than I am Jacobs at cost. Like I would much rather pay for Mixon than Jacobs.
Agree.
The weird thing about the offense is they didn't use the fullback at all. Like I think he has something like I remember hearing a stat. It was on Underdog. He's like 20 career rushing attempts with the fullback on the field in his entire career. It might be a little bit higher than that. It's really low though. I think freaking Houston, you could beat that by like week 2. How they're going to feature this offense and how they're going to run it. And they're not going to do as much shotgun either. So there's going to be a lot more like single back and stuff like that. And that I think that actually helps Mixon. So I don't mind paying the cost of Mixon. Okay. But yeah, like why I'm more worried about the Green Bay situation for Jacobs is like, I like those guys a little bit more and the talent to push them. Like there's nobody in Houston that's going to push Joe Mixon. Unfortunately, just is what it is. It's not going to happen with Jawar Jordan. It's not going to happen with, why am I blanking on his name? The guy from last year. Those
Damian Pierce.
Yeah, Damian Pierce isn't like I know he's getting hyped, but he's gonna be like kick returning doing that stuff. So they also sign him long term, so they believe in him. So it's interesting to see. But if I have to choose between the 2 of those guys, I would happily pay the 4th round cost on Joe Mixon as opposed to the 3rd round cost on.
Jesse, so choose between these 2 guys, Joe Mixon or your guy Kenneth Walker.
I'm gonna take Mixon. I'm more confident in the volume, even though we're starting to hear this where it's coming out like, hey, they view him as a 3-down back. Now that is coach speak, and like he was better than Charbonnet and like yards per route run and stuff for that for sure. So it entirely is possible, but like the stuff coming out of Seattle is they really like Kenneth Walker. So we'll see how that shakes out with this new improved offensive scheme and everything they're doing with Grubb. If they want to feature him like, they did in the past, then yeah, it could happen. I'm much more confident Joe Mixon gets that overall workload and volume because Mixon saw like something like 70 targets last year. Like Mixon saw a ton of work, and I expect him to see that work again because he could be the check down guy. And we've seen Singletary, like he was solid last year in Houston. Now we're just getting a better overall running back. So yeah, I'll take Mixon, which sounds kind of gross. Like I'm taking Joe Mixon over Kenneth Walker, but yeah.
One more Mixon or Kamara, who's going one spot ahead of him.
Oh, Kamara's a tough one. The whole difference is like Kamara he fell off a cliff similar to Josh Jacobs where the regression, everything was there. Yeah. Like I just don't trust the Saints offense with Derek Carr now. That's my big issue. Now it's going to be ugly volume, so Kamara's going to get there. But like on points per game basis, I expect Mixon to outscore Kamara. So this is just gross, me hyping up Joe Mixon, but that's more about this. I'm taking Mixon over Kamara, and I don't know how I feel about myself anymore. It's just a weird situation to be.
Listen, here's the real answer. Take Jalen Waddle, take DK Metcalf, take Mark Andrews or Trey McBride, and don't worry about this mess. That said, I have a few shares of Mixon this season already. So let's do it. Let's move to the fifth and final round for today. We'll start off with CJ Stroud from those Houston Texans, Dalton Kincaid, Anthony Richardson, Malik Neighbors, Amari Cooper, Zay Flowers, George Kittle, T. Higgins, Aaron Jones, Joe Burrow, James Conner, and George Pickens. So we get into a few more quarterbacks. We have a fair amount of wide receivers and a couple of tight ends here. Jesse, in the fifth round, who do you hate?
It's Aaron Jones. Now, I could make the case against CJ Stroud right now because we're talking about another guy that needs to push into that 50 touch. Like to be the QB1, he needs to have a monster season passing. I just much prefer that offense. And my issue with Aaron Jones is he's getting a downgraded offense, downgraded situation. They've already talked about it being a split in Minnesota. Like they're not going to feature Aaron Jones. So if you're in a worse offense with either Sam Darnold or a rookie quarterback and you're not going to be featured with volume, how the fuck does Aaron Jones pay off this cost? That's what I wonder. Because last year in a situation, he was like running back 26 with 12 points per game. Now you can say his expected volume was a little bit better. I mean, it's not much better. So it's really hard for me to get it with Aaron Jones. Like I have not clicked Aaron Jones once at that cost. Like I've just completely avoided him. I don't want to pay that cost. If I'm paying costs for running backs, I'll just go later because the wide receivers here are still really good. There's the quarterbacks. Like I know I was kind of discounting CJ Stroud, but I'd rather have Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, rather have the tight ends. Like Aaron Jones is just not a guy I'm interested in drafting in the fifth round. That just feels like the old dead zone running back, like coming down to bite you. And I get it. He was really awesome in the playoffs, but injury concerns, like he's going to get hurt. It's going to happen. And then he's not going to get the volume on top of it. So I just don't know how Aaron Jones pays off that cost in the fifth round. So Aaron Jones is a hard fade for me in the fifth round.
Yep. Totally agree with you. He was my guy here as well. Totally easy. I have 0 Aaron Jones this season. You know who I have a lot of? Ty Chandler. You know why? Because it goes in the middle of the 12th round. You're telling me that 7 rounds later, I could potentially get the number 1 running back here. I think it's more ambiguous than people want to believe. And Ty Chandler has been getting hyped up about how much he's improved this offseason already in camp. If you want another name, I think the name is George Pickens. That's an easy name to fade here, assuming Brandon Aiyuk ends up a Steeler today or tomorrow. I just think George Pickens goes from the clear-cut number 1, who is going to live off of a hyper-efficient 115 targets and have that deep ADOT, to a guy who's probably moves closer to 195 targets and has to become like a DK Metcalf or one of these rookie season guys like
Brian Thomas Jr.
Who do I have? AJ Brown, 52 receptions, 1,051 yards, and 8 touchdowns. George Pickens would have to do something like that because I think his targets will come down. He needs to be hyper efficient. But guess what? George Pickens is not AJ Brown as much as he wants to be. And I think that with Aiyuk in town, Aiyuk is the clear one. Pat Freiermuth may get more volume than George Pickens, and George Pickens could be more of a stretch the field guy. Now, if it's Russ, Russ, I think, still has the deep ball in him with accuracy and touch. It's not as good as it used to be, and he certainly needs to get out of the pocket to utilize it at its best. But Russ has the ability to get the ball to George Pickens. The question is, how often are they going to be throwing the football to support 2, maybe 3 options in the passing game, in addition to the running backs who are going to be heavily involved in the passing game. So, yeah, he's an easy fade for me in the 5th round, assuming Aiyuk goes to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, if Aiyuk comes to Pittsburgh, like I don't want another pass catcher in that offense. That is what it is.
Yeah.
Because like we already talked about the issues of Freiermuth, of Russ going the middle of the field, like it doesn't happen. So Freiermuth is going to be non-existent. Pickens will be so up and down, like he's the ideal best ball target because he'll have some spike weeks, but the efficiency will be there. But like you talked about, like he has to be like peak AJ Brown, and AJ Brown that season was not like he wasn't a guy that was great for you starting. If you tried playing him in your lineup as rookie year, it was super frustrating because these low volume pass attacks, especially with Russ is a rusher. With at least Fields, like we saw DJ Moore, that whole experience was happening. But where it's going to go is going to go to Brandon Aiyuk because Brandon Aiyuk is just superior wide receiver across the board. So if I'm investing in one wide receiver at Pittsburgh, it's Brandon Aiyuk. Like I don't want to play the game of the wide receiver 2, the tight end. Like I just don't see the ceiling for those guys. So I'm 100% with you. So yeah, like I think what Brandon Aiyuk does is he kind of shakes up how everything works there, and like he's just going to get more targets than Freiermuth or Pickens would. And I think it kind of hurts running backs a little bit because he's going to see more. So overall, it's interesting to talk about Pittsburgh with Brandon Aiyuk. I think it helps out the efficiency across the board. So these guys can be more efficient with less volume. Works out. I think it really works for like Russell Wilson and makes his life a lot easier. Fields is the starting quarterback. We just saw DJ Moore put up a wide receiver, 6th season with Justin Fields? And Aiyuk is just a better player than DJ Moore. Like I know, like they're both. I'll say this: they're both really good wide receivers. I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, it's not ideal for Pickens or Freiermuth. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. Last year, Pickens, and we know the quarterback situation was atrocious for Pittsburgh last season. He finished as the PPR wide receiver 30, 106 targets, 63 receptions, 1,140 yards, and 5 touchdowns. By all accounts, a really, really good second season from George Pickens. I don't think it gets much better if they add an alpha. We know Deontay struggles, even though he received the volume, if you want to call it that, in Pittsburgh last season. I think Aiyuk could just cannibalize some of that. Pickens is still going to have the highly efficient, nice yards per reception that he had last year at 18.1 yards per reception last season. I think that's ridiculous. He's great at what he does, but like you're saying, he's not the technician that Aiyuk is. He doesn't get open with as much as often, I'll say, as Aiyuk does. And if you're Russ, a vet quarterback, or if you're Fields, essentially still a young quarterback feeling it out, either way, you're going to rely on that guy who gets open, and that guy's going to be Brandon Aiyuk 10 times out of 10.
100%. I got 100% with you on that. Yeah, like that shakes up that entire offense. So I'm like, not great. No, great for the Pickers guys. But yeah, like where Pickens succeed is like he's really, really good in downfield post corners and 9 routes and all that stuff. That's kind of what his bread and butter is going to be. They're going to just have him do that more. Like he's just going to be running downfield a ton of 9 routes doing that. And Brandon Aiyuk's going to be the guy that's going to get like the easier targets. So Brandon Aiyuk is the X. He's the alpha there. It'll be interesting to see. So we're just waiting for the trade details. If it goes through, then sorry, Pickens. It was nice knowing you.
And assuming Roman Wilson gets healthy, I mean, he's also going to get 50 targets maybe on the season. But that's not really going to eat much into Brandon Aiyuk. That's going to eat into everyone else. And then, of course, whatever Jaylen Warren and Najee get, it's going to be tough for anyone else to survive in a low volume passing attack, which is what they want to do because they have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as quarterback. They have Mike Tomlin as a head coach, and he who shall not be named as the offensive coordinator over there, who's going to give Cordero Patterson about 175 touches this season if he's healthy. So we'll see.
So ready for it. Let's go see Pat. Come back to me, baby.
Oh man, let's go. I have him stashed in a few spots actually. Cordero Patterson. Let's go. On that note, ridiculous. Let's end the show for today. We are the Fantasy Football Universe. You can find us at fantasyfootballuniverse.com, on Twitter, on X, which is also called Twitter. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. We're on our own website. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you are interested in finding us. You will probably find us there. If you are happy with this content, please like and subscribe. And for this guy, Jesse, I am this guy, Jeremy, and we will see you next time.